All right, welcome back, everybody. So sharing someone else's personal information without their consent will, from today, be a thing of the past for South Africans as the Protection of Personal Information Act comes into effect. It's regulated by the Information Regulator, and the Act will be used as a reference in instances where consumers feel that their personal information is abused or companies demand personal information when it's absolutely unnecessary. It also has personal data protection implications for unauthorized data and images of third parties, including social media platforms such as WhatsApp groups, Twitter, Instagram, perhaps Facebook, all of these kind of things. To talk more about the enforcement of the Protection of Personal Information Act and what it really means for the public, let's welcome Alison Tilley. She's a member of the Information Regulator. Alison, great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Good morning.
All right, so let's get all this jargon out the way. What does it mean for us now? This act is enforced from today. What exactly does it mean?
Well, there's two different things I think today holds. The first is that when information is processed, that is in personal information, your information, there are a whole new set of rules that come into play, which are basically about the fact that you can only collect personal information in the right way. So you have to collect it with somebody's consent or as part of a contract. Following that, you have to end up processing it properly, and then you have to make sure that it's disposed of when you no longer need it. Because that's POPIA. The other act, which is going to now become the jurisdiction of the regulator, is the Access to Information Act, which involves the right to information, and the regulator will now have the jurisdiction to order the release of information following on a request for information in terms of that act. So it's quite a lot going on.
It sounds like it. So, I mean, all of these SMSs that we're getting and these emails that we're getting, what fundamentally does that mean? I mean, obviously, I see it as an opportunity for me to get out of getting all of this spam, but there's obviously a lot more to it. So perhaps talk to us through why are we suddenly getting all these mails and SMSs from people?
I think what people are trying to do is make sure that they are communicating with you with your consent. In order to communicate with you, they have to process your personal information. They have to keep your email address. They have to keep it updated. And what they're wanting to do is make sure that that's something that's happening with your agreement. And you know, this is perhaps the other messages you're getting, that there is a privacy policy that they do have, that they do apply, and that you can go and have a look at the privacy policy and make sure that you're comfortable with the provisions that they are applying.
So, I mean, I've also noticed that it's happening on a lot of the WhatsApp groups. So, and I'm a bit confused by this because, you know, if you're part of a group, suddenly I'm seeing everybody pasting the exact same message from one group to the next group to the next group. Is this necessary? I mean, is that a part of this act, or is this not really going as far as perhaps a WhatsApp group that you're on for a school or work or anything like that?
Well, I've not really been persuaded that it is entirely necessary. I think the thing is that if you're part of a WhatsApp group, and we know that in order to join the group, you have to consent to being part of the group. If you've been added to a group without your consent, that is a problem.
Yeah.
And that would be what administrators are doing, is just to check that everybody on the group actually joined the group and wasn't added to the group without their permission. And I think that's the thing that administrators of WhatsApp groups must just keep an eye on. You know, it's fine if you send somebody a link or you say, you know, do you want to join the group? But just setting a group up, that's a little tricky. You really want to ask people first.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I mean, I think you know you're on a WhatsApp group. If you don't want to be a part of it, I suppose just leave immediately. We don't necessarily need that coming in. But I think the big question is, I mean, this act was signed into law in 2013. Here we sit in 2021. What has taken so long?
Such a good question. I wish I had an answer.
Yeah.
No. Look, I think that, to be fair, there is the answer lies partly in setting up the regulator itself, because you must remember that this is a completely new institution. It was literally started from scratch, from 5 members who were appointed, and who then needed to do everything from, develop the organogram, to hire the staff, to develop all the policies and procedures. It maybe could have happened more quickly, but certainly just to build the infrastructure that you need in order to respond to the kinds of complaints that we're anticipating. I think that's really lies at the heart of why it has taken this length of time.
Yeah, I mean, it basically reminds me of the Political Party Funding Act, which is something now, of course, we're waiting on with what's happening with President Ramaphosa and the funds and the bank accounts and all of that stuff as well. But, I mean, this particular act came into effect on the 1st of April this year, and requires that information on the private funding of political parties and independent candidates must be recorded, it must be preserved, must be available on request to the public. Does it not differ in relation to what the Protection of Personal Information Act aims to do as well?
No, I don't think so. There are 2 parts to information. The first part is that when we record information, and particularly in the state, and in fact, let me talk about the state. The state records information for us. The state is acting on our behalf. When we request that information, it's our information. However, the state has a duty to all of us. Some of us, it's our personal information. So whenever you have information, you've always got to be thinking about not just the fact that people are asking for the release of that information, but whether they're good reasons, not reasons out of, embarrassment or not wanting people to know what's going on, but reasons about, well, perhaps it's personal information, perhaps it's security information that you really can't release. Those are always things that you're doing when you're thinking about releasing information. So I think there's a tension, but they're certainly not in contradiction with each other.
I mean, here's a question, and something that we're all being faced with at the moment. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. If you go to a restaurant, if you walk into a shop, if you walk into your business on a daily basis, if you go and visit somebody that lives in some kind of a secure estate or into a building, you've got to write everything down. And this was before COVID, but now during COVID, it's ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. You have to supply all of your personal information. So my question is twofold. What happens from now? Because this information, as we know, is very private and we don't necessarily need to be giving it out. And 2, what happens to that information? It's all there. What happens?
So I think there's 2 different things going on there. The one is the COVID information, and that will be your name and your telephone number and your temperature, and just recording the fact that you were in a particular place at a particular time in order to be able to identify people who've been exposed. Now that's dealt with in terms of one set of rules around information gathering for the purposes of managing COVID. There's a second problem, which sort of gets conflated, but the 2 are happening together, as you say, where you go in and people want your name, ID number, address, vehicle registration, blood type, in order to just enter a building. And that is going to have to, that has to stop.
It is. Because one has to ask the question, what happens with that data? You write it down. Does it honestly just sit there in a book and disappear? Because it is literally mining information from you. It must go somewhere. They must use it for some purpose.
Well, if they are using it for some purpose, and you do find out that they're doing so, that's a violation right there.
Yeah.
And you need to notify the regulator, because it's excessive information gathering. It's unnecessary, and I think security companies, I'm not sure to what extent they've fully absorbed the fact that their frontline staff, are going to need training and a new form.
Yeah, indeed, because it can't go on like that. But just very quickly, Alison, I've got less than 30 seconds with you. What are the implications of using an unauthorized data and images in social media, like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram? What happens then?
Well, there's a number of, that's a very complicated question. There's a number of different issues at play.
Can I pause you, Alison? Can I pause you? Because I think that is such an important one. May I steal just a few minutes from you at the end of our news at 8? Are you available just to sit with us for 5 minutes and give us that answer? Because I think it's a very important one.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, Alison, I'll put you on pause there, because I think, that is something we all do. You take a picture with somebody and you automatically throw it all over social media, and you're so proud and happy that you have this picture. But what are the implications? And I think we need to get to the bottom of that now. So we'll get those 5 minutes after the news at 8. But this is where we say goodbye to SABC 2, unfortunately.
Always low.